It's not a loan, it's not a credit card, it's not an overdraft, it's a finance. We're buying the invoice from the customer.
Today I'm joined by Joshua Queen, who is a product manager at Asto and is in their invoice financing product team, I guess. Nice to see you, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Great, well it's really good to have you here.
Asto is all about helping small and micro-sized businesses kind of stay positive.
Yep.
In one very literal sense around sort of cash flow, sort of keeping cash flow positive, a range of sort of features that help in that kind of productivity bookkeeping space. So
Sure.
We have a really handy receipts tagging tool where users can tag to do their expenses management, really easily export data for audit purposes and things like that. And we've also got a really useful kind of invoice issuance product which allows users on the go to use their mobile to figure out exactly what they need to package into their invoice and send it off to their customer. So really simple tools that we think add sort of, again, sort of remove quite a lot of the pain of the day-to-day running of a business. We've launched last Monday, in fact, our general release to sole traders of our invoice finance product. So this is the first of innovative finance products that, again, looking at sort of keeping cash flow positive. We've currently got 4 squads, cross-functional squads, classic model, product manager, product designer, QA, front-end, back-end engineering, all working together, basically looking at the big problems, customer problems that we can potentially add value or provide value in those spaces.
Yeah.
Those 4 teams, so the team that I'm heading up at the moment, working sort of with that invoice finance product, we've just launched to market and we're about to launch to limited companies further down the line as well. Mm-hmm. I'll come on to that later. We've got a team looking at sort of across the app, so making sure that everything sort of ties together, that the experience is smooth across the entire app, making sure that those features sort of tie together as well. A team looking at the invoice issuance product, and then also a kind of back-end platform team. We're a modern platform API-driven business,
yeah.
And so that team is kind of looking at to make sure that our infrastructure is able to accommodate those kind of plug-and-play APIs when we need to bring new services and things on board. So
cool.
Asto was born out of the idea that the small and micro-sized business category in the UK is really underserved by innovative financial products, and doesn't really at the moment have like a holistic kind of management app on a phone where you kind of do all the things that you need to do as a small business owner.
Sure.
So we really kind of early on identified that there are 5.5 million small businesses with less than 10 employees that use an app, and we really wanted to figure out how we could provide these features and this finance in a way that's accessible to them and a way that they'd want to use it.
Sure.
We really found that in our early research when we were looking at what the Asto platform and product could be, we really looked at the fact that sole traders, very small limited companies, because they tend to be new, because they tend to have sort of kind of real world experience, they're not managers within a business, they own this business, they tend to take a lot of their habits from their personal financial lives into running their business.
Sure.
So they expect things to be mobile first.
Did you just go with the assumption that these people enjoy really intelligent sort of digital services and apply that to the product, or was there anything else which came out of maybe some user research, for example, that helped you shape the idea for Asto?
Our quantitative research, where we spoke to about 2,000 small business owners,
Yeah.
really kind of highlighted the fact that almost half of them have concerns around their cash flow position. We know that small businesses are often at the rough end of the practice of long payment terms and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business and you've got payment terms on 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, if let's say you've just done a really big job and you had a lot of pro forma costs and whatever, and you've issued your invoice on a 30-day term, you get another big job in the next week, there could be situations where you haven't got enough working capital to then go and sort of fund that job.
Yes.
So we really saw a fantastic opportunity to bring a very specific product to market, an invoice finance product. It's not a loan, it's not a credit card, it's not an overdraft, it's a finance. We're buying the invoice from the customer.
Yes.
Allowing them to unlock that value immediately, and then be able to finance their next job.
We'll see a little bit how, and a lot of companies that we've spoken to are very tacit about, you know, the fact that they'll work with RegTech providers like Onfido and Authentic and that kind of thing. What sort of providers you're interested in linking up with?
We've got to do KYB, we've got to do KYC.
Yeah.
Once the kind of pot's set up, and I said we'll go into more detail in the demo.
Yeah.
And you come on to we need to do ID and V, so absolutely we use Onfido to do that, and we think they're excellent.
Yeah.
In terms of when you're drawing down, you will actually financing the invoice, and we're providing the money to the user. So there's payments orchestration in terms of collecting the invoice when it's paid. We need to set up a direct debit, so we've got Go Cardless to do that. So It really is, as I said at the top of this, we're building a platform that really is able to leverage sort of the API kind of infrastructure that exists that other companies are using, so that we can plug and play where it makes sense for us to bring third-party services in.
For sure. So now we're just going to take a look at the actual journeys themselves. So as you can see from this screen, start off with the invoices area, this sort of dial feature, which we can play with quite nicely. And then clicking on the call to action at the bottom, we can take a picture of a specific receipt. So we've got this nice loading screen here to see that we're processing. And a nice image appears at the bottom of this receipt format, and we can edit those details or delete them quite cleanly. Adding tags, a super important part of any metadata process, obviously. Nice bright use of colors, and you'll get used to this sort of Asto's particular typeface is a little bit different. It's kind of like a fun Lego style thing in it. And then there we have the process added, and we can sort these different receipts. So there's actual nice filtration options here for the different receipts we've got. And we'll take a little bit of a look at those and our filters. We can export those files nice and neatly. A nice holding message here allows us to kind of...
and that's why the OCR technology was really important for us, because it is such a time saver. And we've actually got 2 layers for that, which is really interesting. So once you've taken a photo of that receipt, one provider actually does the sort of kind of basic OCR, bringing out the high level details, which allows us to sort of instantly represent to the user that we've got your receipt. Here's a picture of it, and there's maybe some high level detail. And there's about over the next sort of 15 to 30 seconds, we're processing it to a higher accuracy level. So that then we can say, okay, so here's the merchant, here's your here's the value of the receipt, here's potentially the VAT that you paid on it. Here's the currency, so it is multi-currency. That was actually taken at Money 2020.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So it is multi-currency as well. So if there are any inaccuracies, I mean, this technology is never 100% accurate. It's pretty good, but if there are any inaccuracies, the user can go in, edit the details, change whatever they need to change, and that will be stored securely on our side.
You mentioned that you can do different currencies. Is there any instances where you wouldn't be using this kind of feature, or is the exception here every single transaction within my Asto account should be categorized via the metadata and via the camera? We
provide tools that kind of are adjacent to banking and accounting, but it's entirely up to the user as to how much they want to use, which is why, I mean, for invoice issuance, we've got sort of optional fields, and basically we allow the user to do as little or as much as they want to.
This is the invoice generation process. I'm just going to go now. Quite quickly moving into the data entry. So we've got the entry amount and then a times option. And what we can really quickly do then is generate large sort of amounts here, I guess. Add a little tag, and below a little button. What's the option here? Do you know? The add another.
So that's to add another line item to that invoice.
Cool.
You might have consulting time. You might have mileage, for example, afterwards. So you can go in and add a new item. I think that's.
There we go. I've just seen that. Perfect. So adding another item means we've got really good customization here in terms of what we can achieve with this invoicing tool, and super dynamic, as we can see. Real simple options in terms of how we can add and and remove certain functions such as VAT. So clicking through to the next, we've got part of our invoice done. We can add a little description. You can see there the number of items in the invoice. So here the user's entering their note, and we can see the amount there. Helpfully, a little bracket for VAT. And then we add the recipient. So nice and clear what's being asked via this sort of grayed out bits of text here. I guess a simple, quite clean design pattern we're used to seeing nowadays. And really clear to see the invoice generated. So straight away we delivered value and a nice extra customization here for color. So at what point do you say, I want you as a user to enter this data, or I think that we should do it this way as the product itself? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the priority from your perspective?
Obviously, if you're sending an invoice, we kind of need to know who the customer is that you're sending it to. We need to know their email address so that we can send it to them. But that's that, and we need, and obviously there needs to be an item in there to invoice. But that really is kind of the only mandatory information that you need to add into that. So again, it's completely up to the user to customize to as little as much as they want. Initial
feedback on the kind of the creation of these invoices? Are people enjoying it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our technology is actually based on, we acquired a company in December, Albert, Albert were the number one, or still are the number one invoice issuance product in the App Store. Again, we know, and I touched back on the research that we did when we spoke to small business owners. Not only do they bring their personal behaviour into running their business, but also a lot of their personality. So it's really important that we allow our users and our customers to add their kind of personality, and whether that's sort of relating to their brand as a business, but when we're talking about sole traders, maybe it's like a consultant, like a freelance consultancy, or maybe it's a carpenter who might not have a recognised brand, but they do want to bring their personality onto their
website will have a colour, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Little stuff like that. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, super important for the user. And so I think this will nicely sort of segment over to the invoice financing option. So it starts off with a sort of the advertising and a carousel to introduce the feature. Rather race through those there, but it seems like it's the beginning of another KYC, KYB process here. So like actually getting to know the user, an 8-part process. These are quite nice sort of general features here. So like the ability to sort of see where you are in the process, that kind of thing, is again table stakes for what you were talking about before, sort of consumer facing retail products. So what was going on from the thinking perspective here, the design perspective? Anything in particular when you were deciding what information to get here?
I think we just wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And then I said we've got a really interesting back end in terms of how we're sort of dealing with the data that customers entering here. So we just wanted to make that flow as smooth as possible, cut out a lot of the extraneous detail that if a customer was to go in to apply for a credit card or an overdraft in a bank, they might have to like every detail of themselves and their dog maybe. Like we wanted to cut all of that out, just keep it to what we absolutely needed.
And so I guess that there is a lot of information required here, then I can imagine. And what, not to say why, but yeah, I guess why is there so much information required at this process? Is that not already gathered initially in the onboarding experience, or is that something you'll have to ask for later?
We specifically decided to sort of split the onboarding experiences between the initial sign up and sort of the invoice finance product, because we have an Asto platform that has lots of features that are useful to businesses that might not issue invoices, for example. So to get all of that kind of personal information up front would be, it just doesn't really, it's not necessary for us at that stage. So we prefer to do this kind of staggered approach where if you are interested in this product and you've sort of had a look into it and you think it's appropriate for you, you go through and you give us some additional detail. But again, hopefully, we definitely believe much less onerous than a traditional application process.
For sure, definitely.
Some of these processes for these sort of traditional products can take weeks and you have to go to a branch and speak to a business, small business banking manager. This is all online. End to end, you can do it in 10 to 15 minutes. So we've really distilled down what I've said is quite a complex process on the back end to what we hope and think is a really kind of user-friendly, simple and quick process, whilst giving the user enough confidence and trust that obviously we're taking due care and attention around sort of finance products. So.
Sure. We've just seen a little bit earlier on the Onfido process, so we were scanning a document there, and we've also added an account. So what we're doing now is go through the invoice process.
Yep.
So I guess we're generating an invoice now within the product.
Exactly.
And what we'll then be able to do is we're adding a few of our personal data bits, capture a photo in this instance. So again, I guess this is going to be. Is this based on receipts? No, it's an actual invoice.
Exactly, yeah.
And then a nice sliding bar dynamically gives us sort of different dates and different payment amounts. As you would expect from a sort of loans and credit style product, we'll be able to sort of control some aspects of what we repay and when we repay it. A terms and conditions document. Quite clear actually here, which is quite nice. We often talk here about like how you make that sort of process easier, and then there we go. We've got a really nice confirmation message, and that's been sort of 5 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
And we've got £150 into our account.
Yep.
That's a really slick process. So at the end of the journey, we saw the fact that the user was presented with what was called an invoice finance pot. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and how that's applicable to the user?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so in that first, so our kind of journey is broken down into sort of 3 stages. One is our kind of general sort of finance onboarding.
Yeah.
Once that's and at the end of that stage, you get given the finance pot.
Okay.
The second stage is the ID&V process, what we call the setup pot, where you add your bank details as well, so that you can pay us back the money.
Yeah.
And then the drawdown process, which is kind of standalone process at the end.
Okay.
But in terms of that first sort of onboarding process, when we take all of that data, and as I said, we sort of throw that into our orchestration layer, and there are sort of intelligent things going on the back end that basically tell us, based on the information you've given us, we think that we can provide a finance pot up to this limit.
Yeah.
So it's basically just sort of this represents the maximum value of the combined invoices that you can finance.
Okay.
And the reason we call the decision to call it a pot was actually quite a specific one. Number one, it kind of explains what it does. The idea is that you take out of the pot when you finance an invoice, but once that invoice is paid back, then the money goes back into that pot, becomes available again.
Is there anything which you would say the future of this specific thing? Is there more user interaction involved with that, or does this serve the purpose of being a sort of like, here is what is in your pot, this is what you as a small business are able to access over the course of your sort of, I guess, a year?
So it's kind of ongoing.
Yeah.
We'll be in a process where we'll be kind of reassessing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's really important for us that we're sort of crystal clear to the customer around kind of the limits to which we can offer, because we don't want to get you to a stage where, I don't know, you might have a £50,000 invoice come in and you've gone through all the process and you want to finance the invoice, and we say, sorry, in this situation we can't go to that level.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, it just comes back to that concept of it is it's a dynamic thing. It will go up and down depending on how much you sort of use the product. Yeah. And you can't actually see it from this demo, but the pot animation itself does actually physically deplete, so you can see sort of whereabouts, sort of how much you've got left available.
Yeah. There is an onboarding experience here for this. There is also an onboarding experience for your account as a whole.
Yes.
So, but the requirements for this onboarding must be different.
Yes.
So how do you, were there any particular challenges based on sort of coming up with that logic for deciding what is and is not required for this particular process?
We certainly didn't want to sort of front load all of that information gather at the top of the sort of introduction to Asto. because we think we've got tools and features that are available for, as I said, businesses that don't just need invoice finance. So it did kind of make sense for us to have a separate onboarding journey. And as I said, I mean, if you the main point is if you compare it to, as I said, the traditional products that are available on the market at the moment for these kinds of very small businesses, sole traders, side hustlers, whatever. We do think it's a much simpler process. It doesn't require you to sort of find lots of documents and upload documents and things like that. It's very much, this is information that should probably, or usually is top of mind anyway. It doesn't require you to go and research or go into your accounts and figure out kind of any kind of sort of in-depth information like that. So we have tried to keep it as high level as possible, whilst also making sure that we're obviously protecting ourselves as a business, protecting our users as well, because we don't want to be offering products where they're not appropriate.
Powered by Santander, you know. Does that is that where it comes from? I mean, is that where your financing come from? Is it channeled through you guys from them, or do you look at other providers for providing? And I would imagine it's not a marketplace per se. No.
Finance is provided by Asto. We're very clear about that. I mean, it's really interesting the relationship. I mean, we're wholly owned by Santander Group. And that's fantastic for us because we're able to sort of kind of leverage the huge amounts of experience that the bank has and the people in the bank have in this particular market. We're kind of a big melting pot of lots of different experiences, and really that just actually strengthens the way that we work. And we're able to, as I said, leverage all of those individual skills when we're building products. But in terms of the actual finance itself, it's financed by Asto.
You've rolled this product out very quickly. Now, this is something which I don't think many people who are envisaging working with a company like Santander or one of the big banks here in the UK, they wouldn't expect progress this quickly. So you must have found the experience so edifying in some way. You must have found it complementary to the skill sets.
Our culture is so important to us, and I think culture is often discussed when we talk about fintech, sort of innovators versus incumbents, and but actually. Kind of even in those sort of two concepts, we're kind of proving that you can have a fantastic sort of fusion of the two, which actually really empowers the business to move a lot quicker and actually to innovate a lot quicker. And Sigge, the CEO, is very passionate about small businesses. The reason I joined Asto is because I read an interview that Sigge had given around how she had worked in her parents' restaurant and sort of understood these cash flow issues and was really passionate about solving that problem. And as I think generally as a product manager, it's really important for me that that I can fully be on board with the mission of the company. We're all really passionate about building products that really add value and solve problems, solve the problems that these small and micro-sized businesses have. Even though we're still a reasonably small team, about 50 people, even within that 50, a huge kind of differences in terms of life experience, work experience, etc. And bringing those all together to really sort of supercharge that innovation is fantastic.
This is a big market which needs serving here, so
absolutely,
it makes sense to be serving it. So I guess the message there is banks, fintechs, don't be afraid to work with each other. It can work out very nicely indeed. I guess that's kind of all the time we've got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stop by next week when we'll be talking about design with Monzo. If you want to see more of 11FS Pulse, head over to pulse.11fs.com where you can request a demo. If you've got any questions about the product or want to suggest a journey for us to include on our platform or on this show, hit us up at pulse@11fs.com or find us on Twitter @11fspulse. Thanks very much, Josh.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Homescreen is a show about all things product and design, where we showcase some of the best examples of user experiences from the 11FS Pulse research platform, which includes over 2,500 user journeys from financial service products around the world.